Alright, let's see if we can get a tour booked. Connie wants to ride a horse.
You need a receipt? Oh, thank you.
What's up? You want to do a carriage ride? You want to go on the horsey? Okay. Maya! You brought all your stuff?
Yeah, we'll Alright, bye-bye. I hope you guys have a great day. Take care.
Keeping them cool.
You're welcome to board.
This one's us.
Alright.
There you go, B.
Tampa, Lake City. Lake City? Florida? Oh, I got all Floridians on board. Great. Welcome aboard. Concrete bench right there. Anybody happen to read the plaque on the bench?
Just sat on
So
it.
that's actually the spot where our colony began on February 1st, 1733. From here, the colony spread south. We never went north of the river. North of the river is considered part of the South Carolina territories. We weren't going to invade our own British neighbors. So as we tour the city today, the further south we get from the river, the newer the city gets. Yeah, right. Walk on. Easy. Not yet.
Whoa!
Not yet.
Whoa,
But not
Lansky.
yet.
Say easy, easy.
Okay, walk on.
Here we go.
There you go.
Right, Lord.
Good boy, Felix.
Hey, thanks for stopping.
So when James Edward Oglethorpe arrived here, he met a 7-foot-tall Indian chief by the name of Tomachichi. At 7 feet tall, that was actually normal for the natives along this coast. All the Indians along this coast, going clear down into northeastern Florida, averaged 6 to 7 feet tall, and that included the women. So when the average European arrived here 5 feet 4 inches tall, they called this the land of the giants. Tomachichi was chief of the Yamacraw Nation. Yamacraws were a splinter organization made up of Creeks and Yamasees. They had broken with their parent nations over disagreements with the leadership and their approach to the British. By the early 1700s, Creeks and Yamasees had grown very distrustful of the British, started treating them with a great deal of hostility. Yamacraws wanted to continue fostering friendly relations, establish trade, and thus improve their standard of living. And that is what Tomachichi achieved for his people in his lifetime. Paula Dean fan, Lady and Sons is coming up. It's right here on the corner at Whitaker and Congress. Now this restaurant opened in 1989, but she got her start well before that. She started actually making sandwiches in her garage and bringing them downtown to sell to the construction workers. So everyone loved her food though. She decided to branch out. She and her sons run this restaurant today. They've opened a new one in Myrtle Beach. City are lovely squares. The original city plan called for 27 squares to be built. We actually built 24. 2 today are only partial squares, so there are 22 original squares left to tour. This is the first one laid out in the colony in 1733. It's also our largest at just under an acre in size. This is Johnson Square. Now, the way the square system worked, the square was the central part of a larger unit called a ward. And a ward would be like a neighborhood. So east and west on the square, that's where colonists put public buildings. So churches, businesses, government houses. North and south is where the residents lived, and around this square we had 10 homes on each of these 4 corners. So this square accommodated the first 40 families in their public buildings, all revolving around this central meeting place. We're going to turn on to Bull Street. This is going to be your north-south divider between east and west here in the city. Adopted our city plan in 1733 and followed it right up through the 1950s. Very few cities can boast they followed their original city plan for over 200 years. The City Jewelers building in the background behind Patrick and SpongeBob. Antonio Banderas on his pirate ship was in this direction through this intersection. And they painted this side of the Panera Bread storefront turquoise and put the sign Barnacle Buns over the Panera Bread sign. And then all of the beach scenes in the movie were shot out on Tybee Island. If you've seen the new Baywatch movie, all of it was shot on Tybee Island last summer.
You're goofy. That's stinky.
Built in the foundation of one of our original jails. So when the sun goes down, things start flying off the shelf here in the pharmacy. The manager had a hard time keeping staff. So the regional manager came down and said, spend the night in the pharmacy, was going to debunk all those ghost stories. About midnight, something woke him. He got up to investigate. Can of dog food fell off the shelf, hit him in the head, put him in the ICU with a concussion that night. So he told his manager, you do whatever you need to keep staff, close early if you have to. CBS's tagline for their commercials is we're open 11 until late. Many are open 24 hours. This one closes at 9 o'clock. Up the sidewalk here. That's the diner Jenny's working in when she sees Forrest running on the TV set in the movie. Courthouse actually officially renamed the Tomachichi Federal Courthouse in honor of that great chief. If you take a look up under the eaves, you'll see different colored medallions up there. And each of those is a color of marble that's mined here in the state of Georgia. Georgia has the second most diverse geology of any state in the Union, second only to Texas. So by the jail back there and a courthouse here, what do you suppose this square was used for? This is where the gallows were built.
Whoops.
So Wright Square was known as the hanging square, the place where all wrongs were righted. In the middle of the square today, though, we have a monument that honors William Washington Gordon. Now, he founded our railway system here in Georgia and is responsible for the train transportation system you find throughout the state today. The house is just ahead of us. This house was built in 1821 for James Moore Wayne. He was a lawyer in town, went on to become mayor, and was appointed to the Supreme Court. When he got that appointment, he sold this house to William Washington Gordon to raise 4 generations of his family here. And this includes his granddaughter, Juliet Gordon Lowe. Does anybody recognize that name at all? What was it? Juliet Gordon Lowe. What? Girl Scouts. Founder of the Girl Scouts. Was born in this house on Halloween night in 1860. Now the home is open for history tours during the day and is maintained in the time period she was a little girl growing up here, 1860s, 1870s. I've had passengers rave about the lamb burger, and one of our drivers swears the best eggs Benedict in town is made right here on this road. Well, he's not Jewish and he's not buried there, but it does mark the site of the Jewish cemetery. That extends under the roadway and up and under the Independent Presbyterian Church. Tombstones were moved, bodies were not. The city just built up over top of this old cemetery. Now, the first church built on this site was made of wood, burned down 3 times, and knocked over by a hurricane. The steeple fell in one day for no apparent reason. When the minister decided to build a modern church of brick and stone, he consulted the local rabbi. The rabbi came, blessed the building. They inscribed Jehovah above the door. Haven't had a single problem with that church ever since. Now, Woodrow Wilson married his first wife, Emily, in that church. The production company did leave a bench behind for our use after the filming. However, all the benches used in the movie were movie props and not proper outdoor benches. So in our climate, it quickly disintegrated. There is a second bench from the film in the Visitors Center, which is the old train depot on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. And a third bench from the film resides at the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. Opening scene of Forrest Gump, the one where the feather drifted around the steeple and landed at his feet at the bus stop. Now, the First Baptist Church, this year oldest church building in the city, actually dates to 1833. And what makes it the oldest, this is the only one to have survived all our major fires. Now, all that did was prompt a rumor to circulate around Savannah that the Baptists had been setting on fire. This home was originally built for Moses Eastman of the Eastman Kodak family, but he never lived in it, sold it prior to its completion. This rotunda on front, nearly an identical twin to the rotunda featured on the front of the first White House in Washington, D.C. The architect on that house, a man by the name of Charles Plesky, was one of the War of 1812, and the one you see today is the Reed Mill. Founder, James Edward Oglethorpe. You'll notice he's in full military regalia, has his saber drawn and is facing south. He was a general in King George's army. Now, one of the reasons why he picked this spot for the Georgia colony is he felt there needed to be a buffer between Spain, who held Florida to the south, and the very successful plantations in Charleston to the north. Now, their production of rice and sugar had become so important to the English economy, he thought Spain would eye those resources march northward and take them from the ground. So he put the Georgia colony here to block the Spanish man. Alright, so Sixpence Pub, highly recommend this. Been here for 40 years. You do have to like your meat and potato meals though. Shepherd's pie, bangers and mash, the beef Guinness is my favorite. No deep fryer, so no fish and chips. But they do have a big flounder that's stuffed with a shrimp and crab stuffing I would highly recommend. Republic on this next corner. This was voted Savannah's best newest restaurant back in 2013. They serve what's called modern American fare, so it's all organic and locally grown fresh. I've had the bison burger here and I've had the tabbouleh here. Highly recommend both those dishes. Other passengers have raved about the Carolina barbecue burger, the ham and brie plate, and in the summertime they do a watermelon caprese salad. Built in Moorish fashion, and the story goes it was built by an Arabian sheik as a stable for his Arabian horses. Didn't want them to get homesick. But when Henry Ford came to town, he bought that stable, turned it into the showroom for the Model T, and that became our first Ford dealership in town. Now, a couple things Henry liked about the South. One was his gorgeous climate. The other was the free Spanish moss. He'd actually take the Spanish moss, use it and stuff as seat cushions when the cars run down to Detroit. Now he did know the Spanish moss harbors a little red bug called a chigger. So he'd boil all the Spanish moss before stuffing it into the seats. However, one day, one batch did escape the boiling pot process. He sold Model Ts with chiggers in the seats. That's when we had our first Ford recall. The letter of apology simply stated, we're still working the bugs out. Now this house here behind me, the Sorrel Weed House, this is the largest house in the city of Savannah when it was completed in 1838. Just over 16,000 square feet. So look on this is where Sherman headquartered when he took Savannah.
Which house is it?
The Green Meldrum House, this one right here.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to pull over and just let this trolley go by because his PA system.
Sherman's headquarters. Remember we were talking about the march to the sea from Atlanta to Savannah?
Now, Charles Green invited Sherman to stay here because he felt if the general stayed here it would spare his house, and it worked. It's here to this day. But when he moved in here on Madison Square, greatly upset the ladies of the St. John's Episcopal Church right next door. Couldn't believe they had a Yankee general, let alone Sherman, living next door to their beloved church. So these ladies conspired and they arranged to have those bells ring every 15 minutes, 24 hours a day. So this does drive the general a little crazy. So he sent 2 soldiers up into that belfry and had all the bells removed. Now, unbeknownst to him at the time, one of those ladies was a dear friend of Mary Todd Lincoln. So she fired off a telegram to Washington, D.C., complaining about the brutality they're suffering at the hands of General Sherman. So Mary Todd Lincoln goes to her husband, Abraham Lincoln, to send a telegram down here to Sherman, instructing Sherman to behave himself and to put those bells back. They did tell Sherman how to put the bells back, so he installed them upside down so they couldn't be rocked. They actually hung that way for the next 50 years. So we have a water bucket here. We're going to stop and see if he wants to get a drink before we head on. So just to give you an idea, where we started up at the Hyatt, it took the colonists 100 years to get this far south of the river. So everything original to this square dates roughly the 1830s to 1850s. The exception is this building off the back of the Carriage. Now this building over here is a Scottish Rites temple built by the Freemasons back in the 1920s. You take a look up under the eaves, you'll see beautiful blue stonework up there. All of that is blue lapis. Now back in the day, blue lapis was a pretty blue stone. Today it's a semi-precious stone used in jewelry. You take the blue lapis off that building, go back to our neighborhood jeweler, Levy Jewelers. It's been valued at almost $1 million today. Now, across the street from it, we have a building that was built in 1838. This is our Savannah Volunteer Guard Armory. This is where the Volunteer Guard would meet, practice, and drill. This is the first building purchased by SCAD, our Savannah College of Art and Design, back in the 1970s. There we go. Okay, there we go. Yeah, any property values at all?
Sure.
Okay. 1.6 to 1.8 million. The new builds right here have about 4,000 square feet in under one roof. 2-car garage down below, and their elevator that takes you up to all your floors. These are selling right now for 1.8 to 1.9 million.
Start saving.
But it is 4,000 square feet.
That's pretty big.
This is the adult home of Juliette Gordon-Lowe, the founder of the Girl Scouts. She moved into this house in 1886 when she married Andrew Lowe's son, Willie. This is where she resided for the rest of her days. It's laid out in traditional fashion. Carriage house in the back, high wall garden in the middle, main house up front. Does anybody know the reason for the high wall gardens here in the South? Southern gentlemen did not want to see their Southern ladies hot and sweating working in their bloomers in the garden. So you put all that behind the high wall. Not Juliet Gordon-Lowe. Proudly displayed a garden right here in front of the house. Shamelessly worked it in her bloomers for all of Savannah to see. Now this was such a scandal back in the day. And if you tour all 22 of our squares today and you keep count, you count on one hand the number of homes that have a garden displayed in front. Because it just simply wasn't done back in the day. Now in this part of the tour, I do like to point out the red doors. We've got one here behind me, one across the street. Does anybody know the tradition of the red door? That is called an owner's door. Once you paid your house off and owned it free and clear, you painted that door red. It served as notice to the debt collectors and bankers who went door to door every month to collect your mortgage that they no longer had to stop at your door. It becomes a status symbol in the community and was quite possibly the original stop sign here in town. But the mansion dates to 1873 and it's done in the French Regency style. This was originally the home of Samuel Hamilton, and he was one of our wealthiest Savannahans of the day and would go on to become president of our first electric company. This is your first house in the city to have indoor electricity. Now the night he was going to show off that new technology, he threw one of his infamous parties. However, when he goes to flip the light switch, all the guests ran out here into the square. They felt certain it was going to catch fire and blow up. Now, it was actually tradition on this square for the residents to all gather at sunset, just so they can watch those parlor lights come on in that house as the sun went down. Now, as we make the turn here, you'll notice this church spans the entire block. This is the Cathedral St. John the Baptist. This is your largest church in the historic district. It will seat approximately 1,000 people. Well done. Now, there's been a Roman Catholic church on this corner since the end of the 1700s. Today, this is the headquarters for the Roman Catholic Diocese of Savannah. Now, that diocese covers 32,000 square miles here in the southern half of the state. The church is open free of charge to tour during the day, but I always recommend mid to late afternoon on a sunny day like this. That's when the sun will be in the western part of the sky. It's going to hit that rose stained glass window full on, and it'll flood the inside of the church with all the beautiful colors out of that stained glass window. Notice anything missing on the balconies? Okay.
Doors.
Yeah, how do you get out there? No doors. Savannah had a door tax. You can have a front door and a back door, but any other hinge doors were taxed. So, you have two inventions during that time period. One is that extra tall window called the guillotine window. Spans nearly floor to ceiling. Raised lower half, step through it and access your outdoor areas. You also have the invention of the pocket door. That's the door that slides in and out of the wall. No hinge, no tax. When you tour these older properties, you also discover they have little to no closet space. There was a room tax. It's thought if you have that kind of luxury, dedicate a whole room to your clothes, you can afford to pay more tax. He's a good boy. Founded the colony. Founded it with several prohibitions. One of them was no lawyers. He thought lawyers would slow down the progress of building the new colony, so he put in place a justice system called the bailiff system. He'd appoint bailiffs, you'd take your dispute before the bailiff and argue it. You could either take the bailiff's ruling or duel. Well, these are the dueling grounds right here behind me. They span the whole length of the alley and include that playground at the opposite end. What you'll notice is the convenience of the dueling grounds to the cemetery. Anybody died during a duel, you literally didn't have far to take the body. Now, dueling was outlawed in the colony by the end of the 1700s, but it didn't stop anybody from dueling. They just took it across the river to South Carolina, where it was still legal well into the 1800s. So this is the only cemetery we didn't build over. It's Colonial Park Cemetery. It was open for about 100 years, 1750 to roughly 1854. There are 9,000 people buried here, but you only find tombstones for 600. The reason for the difference is that when Sherman came to town, this is the only site that had a wall all the way around it. So this is where he quartered the 6,000 horses he brought with him. Now they rubbed on, knocked over, destroyed many of our tombstones. The ones we could salvage, but we no longer knew which grave they went with. You'll find those in a large grouping on the far eastern wall. Now this is where our first graffiti occurred. The Union soldiers that were put out here got bored, took their knives and bayonets, they altered many of our tombstones. We never fixed them. So as you tour the cemetery, I always tell my guests to slow down, read the tombstones, do the math, because the graffiti is very subtle. In family plots, for instance, the soldiers altered the birth years of the parents, so parents are born after their children are born, so the math won't make sense. You'll find out here a man who died age 475 years of age instead of 75 years of age. One soldier did get creative and inscribed on one tombstone, "I told you I was sick." You can look for that one in the far corner back there. Now this is the resting place of one of our signers of the Declaration of Independence. His name is Buck Gwinnett. Died at the age of 30, result of a gunshot wound he got during a duel. So he didn't have time to sign very many documents. There are only 5 to 6 known signatures of his remaining in the world today. The last time one of those signatures came up for auction at Christie's in New York, it sold for almost $800,000. So yeah.
Oh man, that skeleton lost his head.
Yeah, that one lost his head. I have no idea what the skeletons are for. Now, if you get locked in the cemetery, and it's been known to happen on occasion, I always tell my guests keep the cell phone handy. You call the fire department, they're right across the street. They got lots of ladders they can get you out. Things around the windows, on the brick, the pink in the White House here on the corner. At first glance, what material does it look like those moldings are made of? Concrete? Stonework or wood of some sort? It's all iron.
Wow.
We had no stone block in this part of the state. It would have been incredibly expensive to import and carve, and wood would never survive this long in our climate. We had lots of iron bars. The iron bars were used as ballast in the empty holds of ships. Ships coming over the ocean to our port. When they got here to the port, the iron bars are cast off as garbage. Mr. Key owned an iron foundry. He'd take that scrap metal, melt it down, pour it into molds, use it to make all these decorations for the exteriors of your home. Now, if you can only tour one house, this is the house I'm going to highly recommend. This is the Owens Thomas house. And this house was built in 1819 by a 24-year-old architect by the name of William J. This is your first house to have indoor plumbing in the city. He built a series of cisterns on the roof and using different diameter sized pipe and gravity, put in flushing water closets. We know them as flushing toilets today. This house had flushing toilets 14 years before the White House did in Washington, D.C. He also put in shower heads and he ran faucets to all the bathtubs. But it's not the antiquated plumbing system that I recommend you tour the house for. Okay. This house, of all the homes you can tour, is the most original to its building. The Owens Thomas family owned it for 120 years of its existence, and during that time period did very little to renovate, update, and modernize. So if you want to see true innovation in home design, this is the house for turn of the 19th century. This is the house I would highly recommend. They make all their ice cream from scratch. It's all preservative free, and they invent many of their flavors. 5 new flavors rolled out this summer. The one I heard the most about so far is Savannah Socialite. They made it with 2 types of chocolate, pecans, and caramel. But their greatest claim to fame, this is the family that invented the flavor Tutti Frutti. Now the summer they rolled Tutti Frutti out to the Savannah communities. One of the summers Johnny Mercer's back visiting family. He goes in, samples a scoop of Tutti Frutti, and declared to Mr. Leopold he'd write a song about that flavor. Goes on to write the song Tutti Frutti, became a big hit for him in Little Rooster. And you'll see the line on the sidewalk over across the way. Now that line right there is about 25 minutes. If the line gets out here to the intersection, I do know it's an hour wait from this point. Opened in 1921. When it opened, it debuted with the silent film Camille, sold out every single ticket. It's going to be on this side. In 1976, they opened that season with the movie The Exorcist, didn't sell a single ticket. That's when they boarded up this beautiful theater and left it abandoned. That is until the 1990s. That's when the cast and crew, both Midnight, The Garden of Good and Evil, and Forrest Gump came to town. Now Kevin Spacey and Clint Eastwood fell in love with this old theater. They worked with the Historic Preservation Society and helped raise $14.1 million. Now that purchased the property and renovated it, and it reopened in 2000. What makes this a unique theater in Savannah today? It only shows films that come in on celluloid reels. It won't show anything digital, no DVD, no 3D, no IMAX, so nothing modern. So we want to see the old classics. We wait to see when they come here to Lucas, like Braveheart. And every Halloween they do bring back The Exorcist, sell out every single ticket. In the middle of the square, you're going to find a statue of John Wesley. He was our 3rd minister in the colony. He and his brother Charles came over in 1735 and weren't very popular. He would walk around the city, or the colony, and in his little black book of sins, write down all the sins he saw everybody committing on a daily basis. Then in church on Sunday, if you didn't freely confess those sins, he called you out in public on them. So after 22 months of that, he's on the boat back to England. I always like to think there's a silver lining in every cloud. On his boat ride back to England, he wrote down all the principles for the Methodist faith. When he returns to the New World, that became his new ministry. The whole world now knows him as the founder of Methodism. Now, has anybody had a chance to eat at the old Pink House yet? Yes. Highly recommend it. The house actually dates to 1739. And while it's not the oldest property in town, it's one of the few homes to have survived the fire of 1796. Does that look like a brick house? It is. But James Haversham, for whom the home was built, discovered in talking to his contemporaries back in England, a man of his status should have had a stone block house. So he stuccoed over the brick, had servants draw lines in it, and he whitewashed it. The only problem is the bricks hadn't had a chance to cure properly. So on the first document day we had here in Savannah, the red and the clay leached through the stucco, coloring it a blotchy pink. And there's no way Mr. Haversham can be known as the man who lives in the pink house on Reynolds Square. So every summer this house would turn pink. Every summer you'd have to pay somebody to whitewash it. Now Jim Williams bought it in the 1960s and put this addition on behind it. And that gave it the kitchen facilities, turning it into the restaurant of today. No matter what you order off the menu, the shrimp and grits, the 22-ounce pork shank, the off-the-bone tender pork beef, the scored flounder, or any of the fillets are going to be cooked to perfection. I always tell my guests to save room for dessert. Any of the chocolate desserts, the pecan pie and praline basket are the best in the city. Tour this afternoon. Out here on the square, I'm going to put you to work. See if you can find any Spanish moss in any of the trees out here on the square. And then tell me what happens to our air temperature out here on the square as we get closer to the center of the square. Do we warm up or cool down? Easy. So, any Spanish moss? And what our air temperature do out here? Are we warming up or cooling off?
Cooler.
Feel it cooling off? Any Spanish moss?
Don't see any.
It's a little odd. Alright, so the monument in the middle of the square honors Nathaniel Green. And he came down here from Rhode Island to test our climate. He and his wife Katie, the heat would be the death of him, died of heat stroke at the age of 43. Now he also detested Spanish moss and pulled it out of the trees every chance he got. He and his son are buried under the foundation of that monument. Day after that foundation went in place over their remains, hurricane sweeps through Savannah, takes all the Spanish moss out of that square. Hasn't regrown in over 150 years. It's also 10 to 15 degrees cooler on Johnson Square compared to anywhere else in the city, no matter the time of day or time of year. So we all like to think Nathaniel Green's just still at work up there, keeping it cool, keeping all the moss out of the trees for us. So here we are at City Hall. You may have noticed City Hall has a gold dome. If you can see that gold dome anywhere in the city, it'll do a couple of things for you. One, it's going to point you north because it's up here by the river and there's no part of the historic district north of the river. It also brings you back to Bull Street, which is the center of town. It's also a great landmark for knowing where the elevator is down to River Street, because directly behind City Hall is your safest way up and down to the River Street area below us. Now the original dome was copper, but when it started to patina and turn green, citizens thought it looked old and moldy. So our private philanthropist came forward and donated the money necessary to gild it with 23-karat gold leaf. And that's how we ended up with our gold dome sign. That's where the elevator is. You're welcome to take the stairs, but the stairs were all built in the 1700s using uneven ballast from the port. So you may have noticed the use at your own risk signs that have been posted by all the stairs. And if it's the least bit damp out, those stairs can be very treacherous. So it's good to know where your elevator is. It's a lot easier with a stroller to go up and down in the elevator than it is to use the stairs. Or even use the ramps, which is
Yeah.
So it was a pleasure to meet all of you.
Aww. Hi, buddy. Whoa.
You want to pet him, Mommy?
You want to give him a pet? Come on, Annie. Give him a pet. Come on, reach his nose, honey. Get his nose.
It's okay, sweetheart.
You want to pet him back?
He says hello.
She wants to stay away from his mouth,
He
I
likes
guess.
to sniff people. That's
Go
why
ahead.
He says hello.